like to start the ELIXIR webinar. Today we will describe you a process where we want to test how the ELIXIR Core Data Resources can be selected. So the ELIXIR Data Platform Work Package 3 delivered within the Accelerate project indicators and a proposal for a process to select ELIXIR Core Data Resources. And this was discussed at the Heads of Nodes meeting in June. And in that discussion, the Heads of Nodes decided that this process that was proposed, it has to be tested before full adoption. Based on that feedback, we have then at the hub with the data platform, we have devised a detailed testing process with detailed steps. And this is the reason for the webinar today. We would like to present this process to you and have an opportunity for Q&A session as well. So with that, I would like to give the microphone to Christine Doings, who will at first present the indicators and the work from the Work Package 3. Please, Christine.
Thank you, Susanna. So we'll first go through the definition. So what has been defined as being an ELIXIR Core Data Resource. We'll also go through the different indicators that will be used to support the process. And then afterwards, Susanna will take over again and go through the detailed process. So how exactly time-wise things are going to I should normally be able to move my slides. Okay. So, okay. So the two. So when we look at the definition of how we've defined ELIXIR Core Data Resources, there are two main concepts that come out. So first of all, ELIXIR Core Data Resources, they are of fundamental importance, and they are of wide applicability and usage. So what do we mean with fundamental importance? So for the conservation of the long-term preservation of biological data, these data resources are crucial, and they're crucial for the broad life science community. Of wide applicability and usage, what do we mean? These are resources that provide complete collections that are of generic value to the life science community. They're really considered by the community to be an authority in their field, and that is generally with respect to one or more characteristics, and they're very much used, and they have very high levels of scientific quality and services. If you so on top of these two characteristics, there are other things that point towards the concept of core data resources. So they're very well known in the life science community. And then you have things like, for example, funders and journals. They often refer to these resources. For example, if you go and publish with Nature, they point to certain repositories as being the place to deposit data. So these core resources are key in the different aspects of the life science community. They're very well maintained. They have a professional service delivery plan based on well-established life science management processes, and they have very well understood dependencies with related data resources. So they don't operate in isolation. These core data resources, they typically coexist with a very broad range of other databases with diverse motivations, which are typically specializing in a particular scientific topic. So what's the place of these core data resources within the ELIXIR mission? So the mission of ELIXIR is to build a sustainable infrastructure for biological information across Europe. And this mission will be achieved essentially by providing two things. First of all, the ELIXIR services. So Susanna is working with the different nodes on the service delivery plans. So the nodes are putting forward through their node applications and service delivery plans, or in the case of EBI, the work program, the ELIXIR services. And they form really the backbone of the life science data infrastructure. The ELIXIR Core Data Resources, they will be crucial to drive the long-term sustainability to maintain access to the life science data. So we all know that many of these databases don't have long-term funding, which is associated with the risk of losing an immense wealth of biological information, and so that leads us why we want to identify this ELIXIR Core Data Resource. So this whole so defining these core data resources will be very useful for three type of stakeholders. First of all, of course, to the life science community. We will be building trust in a broad user base, for example, for new and occasional users. And very important, so they will really, these ELIXIR Core Data Resources will form the focal point of technical and science policy actions, and will support the long-term sustainability of these resources. So it will be very useful to be able to go towards funders and policymakers with transparent indicators and information on the quality and the impact of these data resources. There is, of course, also an element of spreading excellence. So we, once these core data resources are identified, we will be able to show what good looks like and help resource managers in spreading and spread best practice in resource development and operation. And then, of course, the ultimate aim is to strengthen the European position and make sure that the bioinformatics infrastructure is competitive and attractive to collaborate with. So let's have a look at the indicators that will be used to identify the bioinformatics resources. So the indicators have been grouped in 5 categories, and you have a link on the bottom of the slide that brings you to the full publication where all the indicators are described. So they're grouped in 5 categories. The first one is measuring scientific focus, quality of science. The second one is measuring usage. Third category, the quality of the service. The fourth category is all about the legal and the governance infrastructure. And then the last category is the category about impact and translational stories. So first of all, scientific focus and quality of science. So here we will be describing the scientific quality of the resource. So how unique is the resource, how comprehensive it is. So there is a lot of more descriptive indicators here. So first of all, is this an archive? Is this a knowledge base? The statement of the scope. So what is the database exactly covering? How comprehensive is it? The international dimension, so it's not just operating in one country, but it's used by people from a lot of different countries. The depositions come from a lot of different countries, or the data. There are international collaborations, for example. And then the category 1D is how many people are working for the resource, and of course the curational aspect is an important measure of quality. The second category is the category we're probably most spontaneously thinking of when we talk about indicators for databases. So they're measuring usage. So things as citation in the literature, so this is category 2C, but also Google Analytic type statistics, so access via web browsers and also other methods like APIs. Then potential usage, how big is the potential user community, and then the links towards other resources. So how many other resources are depending on this data resource. Then the third category, quality of service, because ELIXIR Core Data Resources are typically presenting are of very high quality. So they're using unique identifiers. Of course, we want a good technical performance or uptime, response time. Is there customer service? Are there trainings available? Through which type of data are the data available? So which formats? Then category 4, how solid is the resource on a legal funding and governance aspect, because this is crucial for the long-term stability. So we expect a core data resource to have his own independent scientific advisory board. Is there a legal framework supporting open science? How about a privacy policy? Is there an ethics policy in place? And how sustainable is their support? So this can be an institution backing up a data resource. So is there an institution behind the resource? And how sustainable is their funding? And have there been, for example, funding crises in the past? And how has this been resolved? So how resilient is this funding for the resource? Then the last category is about impact and translational stories. So this is mostly, so this is not so much a numbers or a quantitative category. It's more qualitative. So what would be the impact on the scientific community if the resource had not existed? If the resource were to disappear and was not replaced, then what would be the impact, of course, on the dependent resource? That's what is called counterfactual analysis. Then accelerating science. How does the resource accelerate science? Does the resource set standards? Does it promote reusage of data and software, promote research efficiency, for example? And then translational data. So these are figures that can help a lay audience or a funder audience to better grasp the other indicators that we've been collected. So these indicators will be used by human beings. So it's not the aim to just have numbers and then calculate a score and say whether that resource is a core resource or not. So Susanna will talk you through the process. So they will be used to inform a peer review process. So the human judgment is, of course, central in the whole process and will not be replaced, but will be supported by the different numbers and indicators that will be gathered. To help standardize and format the collection of the indicators, there are case documents. So the case documents have been tested on a number of resources, and they have been fine-tuned. And what we've seen is that resource managers typically find them very easy to use and to fill in. So it shouldn't be too much of a difficult task to fill these case document templates in for the resources that you would like to submit. So now hand over to Susanna, who's going to talk to the exact process over the coming weeks and months.
So as mentioned in the beginning, Work Package 3, the data platform, delivered the indicators and a process overview of how the core data resources should be selected. And the heads of nodes at the June meeting decided that this process needs to be tested. We have to make sure that it's effective and it's excellence driven and it's fit for purpose before we actually then select the first set of core data resources. And after that meeting, what we've then done at the hub with the data platform, we have developed a detailed process with the different time steps and timelines, and also how we will evaluate the submitted case studies. I will go over this process in these slides step by step. The details are available in the document that has been shared with all at ELIXIR, and it's also here the link to it, so tinyurl.com, ELIXIR Core Data Resources. So that's the place for all the details, and also the links to, for example, the case study documents and all of that is available. So please go and take a look at there for more information. So at first, I would like to discuss a little bit the eligibility criteria for candidate core data resources. So of course, very important to note here is that we are talking about data resources, so not resources from other platforms at this point. The candidate resources that are submitted to us, they have to be part of a node application or a node service delivery plan, or the work program in the case of EMBO EBI. And as mentioned earlier, the purpose of this selection round is really to evaluate the suitability of the indicators and the suitability of the process, and we will aim to select up to 20 core data resources in this first round. So the submission is already open. We opened it on 3rd of October, and it will close on 1st of December this year. For any node, all nodes are welcome to submit case study documents on their data resources. It is very important to carefully review all the criteria, all the detailed information about the indicators, and of course the case study template must be very, very carefully filled in. And it's important to consider that all submissions have to come from the head of node. So we will not accept submissions from anybody else in the node. This is important so that it's clear that the node is submitting the specific resource, and that it's a coordinated submission from the node. So this is very, very important. Any questions, feedback, any help before submitting the case study document, please send us an email. We have an email address, core-resources@elixir.europe.org. So please do send us an email there, and we will respond to that and find out answers to your questions. And like I said, we will accept submissions until 1st of September. So it's submission time is already open and until 1st of September. In December and January, we will review all the submitted case study documents. We will check them for the eligibility, whether the resource is part of a node application or service delivery plan. And we will check them for uniformity and missing information. So it's really important for the evaluation, for the review, then that the case study documents have all complete information, or as complete as possible. And we will contact the head of node if we need more information. It's also important to note that during this refinement period, we will not sort or mark or exclude any submissions unless the candidate resource is ineligible. So this is really just to check for consistency and so that the review process will be easier and also more effective. And then the review process itself, so this will take place in February. We have the ELIXIR Heads of Nodes Committee who will serve as the evaluation committee for this round and for this process. And we will manage and make sure that conflict of any interest will be declared by the heads of nodes, and it will be taken care of. The review process consists of 2 stages, so I will go over these stages in the next slides. But there is first a pre-review by heads of nodes, and then there's a face-to-face meeting taking place after that. And the outcome of this review process is to have the recommendation for the first set of core data resources, so the first up to 20 core data resources. So each submitted case study document will undergo a review by all heads of nodes before the meeting we have in February. And in this pre-review, each head of node is asked to consider the 5 indicator categories that Christine just presented. And we will ask the heads of nodes to score in each of these categories with a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest score. So here on this slide, we have an example. For example, for some candidate core data resource, there could be a score 5 in the first indicator category, score 3 in the next one, and so on. This is I've put here a note to see again the slides that Christine just presented, and of course the publication on the F1000 research channel, which very much describes what each of these indicator categories really mean. And we will then provide a template for the heads of nodes to do this review, so that it will be more consistent and also that the data can be more easily gathered. And then the second part of the review will take place in a face-to-face meeting. We are currently doodling for a date in February. It will be a one-day meeting, location at a major airport in Europe. And at this meeting, each head of node has been assigned as a rapporteur. So they will present candidate resources that are assigned to them. And then the scores, the combined scores, will be reviewed at the face-to-face meeting, and then a consensus scoring is agreed at that meeting with the heads of nodes. So any discussions, any further discussions to achieve an agreement, that will all take place in this face-to-face meeting. And the outcome, as I said, is a recommendation for the first set of core data resources from this meeting. And in addition, we will also prepare a short statement for each submitted candidate core data resource, so that they get also each submission will receive an evaluation back. Oh, it's right there. So each node who submitted candidate core data resources will receive the consensus scoring and statement back for their candidate core data resources, and these or candidate data resources, and these we all be communicated via the heads of nodes. And then, based on the heads of nodes meeting, the ELIXIR Hub will prepare a confidential report for the ELIXIR SAB. So it's really important the main reason why we have this process now is to assess whether the process actually is suitable for ELIXIR, so that we can select core data resources. So we will use the ELIXIR Scientific Advisory Board as our evaluator for the process, and for the SAB to be able to assess whether this process is suitable, we will include all the details of the process and the review, such as individual rankings, into a confidential report that is given to the ELIXIR SAB, and then they can evaluate whether this process and whether the first set of selected core data resources is good and adequate. So the ELIXIR SAB review will take place at just the day before the ELIXIR All Hands meeting, the 20th of March. And we have already we discussed with the ELIXIR SAB last week about this, and they are ready to do this. So they will review the process, and they will review the proposed list of core data resources. And based on their review, they will then prepare a recommendation. And importantly, this recommendation will decide and tell us whether this process that we are now testing is robust and sufficient, or whether there is a need for any modifications or any major concerns. And if needed, of course, the ELIXIR Scientific Advisory Board can report directly back to ELIXIR Board as well. So we really think it will be a good review that they will do for us. And then after the SAB meeting and after the recommendation by them, ELIXIR heads of nodes will look at the recommendation, and based on the outcomes or based on the recommendation, the ELIXIR director may take a decision that this test round becomes the first round of selection of ELIXIR core data resources. So we can either decide that we now have the first set of ELIXIR core data resources, or if it's recommended that the process would need to be revised more, then we can also decide, well, we haven't yet selected the first set of core data resources. But this is the outcome that will then take place after the SAB review. And as I said, so at any point, please do send us feedback, questions, any comments to coreresources@elixireurope.org. I will get that email. And we will collect feedback from nodes after the whole process has been completed. And so based on the SAB recommendation and based on feedback from the nodes, we may amend this process before the next selection round. Before any changes are implemented, then the heads of nodes will need to agree with these changes. And with this timeline, the selection process will earliest be repeated starting from October 2017, so 1 year from now. And then there is just the final slide with links to all the documents. So there is the overview of the process. There is also a link to the case study template. And then naturally the article on F1000 Research Channel that will have all the details of the indicators. And here the process one last time. Would you have any questions at this point?
I did have one question, which was that you tended to talk about repositories, but you did also mention knowledge bases, and I was wondering whether there was any distinction being made in the process between the two, or whether they were all equally.
Yeah, so the process is exactly the same, but in the categories, so the indicators, the first question of the first category is this an archive, so a repository, or a knowledge base? So a curated resource. So that's. But for the rest, all the other questions are exactly the same. All the other indicators are exactly the same. But of course, there will be questions that are less applicable on data repositories and more on curated ones, and vice versa.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Is that me on? So you are having 20. You got 20 people, 20 resources that are being identified for this round. Are you also going to have 20 at the next round, or is that something that you're going to assess after this round?
I think it will be assessed, yeah. And this is up to 20 the current. So it's not a solid target in that sense, but it gives us the play kind of the area where we are, yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
I guess the kind of question I get, so maybe I'll ask you the same question, is what's the benefit to a resource of being an ELIXIR core resource?
I wonder if I need to pass it on to Christine. You touched upon this in your slides as well.
Yeah. So I think you're more pointing on what does a resource gets out of it.
Yeah.
So there is no funding attached.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that ELIXIR has a big pot of money that will be distributed among the 20 resources. So the aim is really to support. So if we think that these 20 resources are crucial for the life science community in Europe, I think ELIXIR will do what it can in case there is, for example, funding issues. So we'll support the resource. So these resources will also be the target of more technical actions, and I think so. We may see in the context of the data platform implementation study type of activities there. So I think it's really a way of going to funders and showing what the European bioinformatics infrastructure is. Niklas, you want to say something?
To completely agree with what Christine has said. So I think the main benefit is really that these are a set of collectively defined data archives and knowledge bases where the ELIXIR head of nodes, i.e. the whole infrastructure, said that they are of utmost importance for European life science. And so they then form the center of a lot of our science policy actions. And hopefully that plays into the whole discussion on sustainability. And we're doing quite a lot on sustainability and activities with various funding organizations. I think the other part, as Christine has said, is that they constitute authorities on things like identifying management, and that will translate into a lot of the technical infrastructure in ELIXIR. So I think those two are for me, the most important aspects of this whole exercise.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions?
Hi, this is Mikael Boy, Sweden.
Hi,
I have one question. Have you also considered taking into account how well core data service is integrated with other ELIXIR services in evaluating its suitability as a core service? For example, if the data requires access control, whether it is using the ELIXIR AAI or not, and other similar things.
Shall I?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think that's a really good comment. I'll hand on to Christine in a minute, but I like the thinking, Mikael. I think it's perhaps a little bit early for that because a lot of these other types of services are not established in production. So I think those are the sort of questions we should continue to look at as ELIXIR develops. But it's a very hard requirement to set when many of these relying services are not yet well-established production systems.
Yes, I agree, but I want it to be brought up already now anyway. Thanks.
Yeah. Christina, do you want to add something there? Sorry.
No, I think that is absolutely so. I think it's only also a first round, and we will need to maybe need to fine tune certain of the indicators, and I think that's something that we may be looking into in the future, and especially if the resources evolve, and through the technical actions we can also establish links and make things evolve and increase coherence. So. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? Not at the moment. Maybe we'll close the webinar at this point. So please do send us feedback or comments or questions, and we will have a second webinar. I just noticed that the month is wrong there, so it's 14th of November. That will be the second webinar. So that's a second opportunity to ask any questions and directly also from Christine and Joe. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and there will be a recording of this available as well for any future needs.